Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to Anno 2205. I'm your Leos Kilvin, and this is a tutorial video to teach you how to play Anno 2205. And before we begin, I'm going to be going over the interface real quick. The first thing to note is credits. And this is basically money. You use it to buy things. It really shouldn't require that much explanation as a resource. However, something that does require explanation is the account limit. So, credits, which are used to buy everything in this game, you earn. You can have a limited number of credits that's decided by your account limit based on your corporation level. You can access the corporation level by clicking this button up here. This allows you to see the corporation level of you and your competitors. In addition, you gain an increased account limit. That's the maximum number of credits you can have by leveling up your corporation. Now, personally, I've never hit this credit limit. I don't know, I've never even got close, really. So you probably won't either, but it's good to know just in case for whatever reason you do hit it. It's good to know. This is your income, or credit balance. Your warehouse, that is your basic structure, generates a tiny bit of credit for you, and generates a tiny bit of every resource you'll need to get started. But you will have to maintain various buildings, which will deduct credit from you every so often. Anything that involves production will generally cost you. However, you do gain revenue from taxing people. That is, your employees. Speaking of employees, you haven't employed anyone yet. We'll get to that, but that's your population. Population comes in 4 different tiers. The first one being workers, the second one being operators, the third one being executives, and the fourth being investors. We'll go into that in time. But for the moment, we're going to continue on. Then, along the top here will be listed various construction resources as you unlock them. Right now we only have one to worry about. So, since we only have one to worry about, we're just going to get to work. In order for people to live in the city that you are trying to found, as we said before, you will need people. You need to have roads. Houses really only work if they're placed adjacent to a road.
Got work to do? We're on it.
There we are. So you want to place about as many houses as you can. Generally, it's a good idea to do some basic measurements for space. So you'll notice here that I now have one house. And 1, 2, 3, and... There. There's now enough room for 2 houses on the side of the block. You obviously can't have more than 2 houses per block because everyone needs to be touching a road. You'd have space in between if you tried to have 3 or houses that just did not work. Now, this means that I'm actually employing people in the temperate region. We'll go into regions later, but for the moment, they are not accessible. Whoop. So, now our people demand things. In particular, they seem to demand organic food. Well, we're going to have to supply that to them. But we need to build a rice farm. Oh no, but we don't have enough biopolymers because I spent them all building houses. Well, that's okay. Thankfully, in order to produce biopolymers, you don't actually need biopolymers. You just need credits. And...
Great. Building material shortages shouldn't be an issue anymore.
Yes, thanks, Sam. Don't care. So, this is a sunflower farm. It produces this stuff called bioresin. It doesn't actually intake anything, it's a farm. It's Tier 1 production. And then there is the biopolymer factory, which intakes 10 bioresin and outputs 10 biopolymer. So it works well out on a 1-to-1 ratio. Different factories, supply infinite here. It works well as a 1-to-1 ratio. Other factories will, however, have different ratios, so you'll have to be mindful of that.
Organic food is perceived as...
Yes. And since we have biopolymers, we can continue building more factories. As we can see here, you'll notice that every factory has maintenance costs. So don't overdo it. They also have other costs in the form of worker, energy, and logistics. And we'll get into these now. Down here we can see our workforce. We have a total of 60 surplus here. 100 being supplied free by our warehouse, and 40 people from people I have actually employed. And in addition, we have energy, or electricity if you will. From power plants, we have none, and from our warehouse we have our free 70, and a little bit's used up by maintenance. Thankfully, people don't actually use electricity. I blame macro generation. Anyway, In order to generate more everythings, we will need to place, say, power plants or transportation centers. Logistics is a weird resource because it's variable. You see how this currently costs 6 logistics. Well, if I actually put a logistics center right here, that'll put us out of electricity, but I'll do it for the purpose of the thing. Logistics cost is actually halved. Why is that? Because it's right next to a logistics building. And that changes the mechanics.
I hope this helps you.
Yes. Thank you, Sam. The distance from the nearest logistics building, in this case the port, actually affects how much of logistics they require. So, if I were to place something really far away, you'll notice down at the bottom there, maintenance cost previews, this costs 13 logistics. But as I move it closer and closer, it requires less logistics. So, keep that in mind. Because you can get pretty costly if you build things too far away. Thankfully, whenever you build something really far away, you can actually just drop a logistics center right next to it, and it's generally not a problem. But when budgeting, you'll have to factor that in. Be careful. Alright, next up on the list. What do we have to do today? We need to actually just employ more people. So as we talked about before, we're just going to have to build more houses. Yeah. More houses. Solves problems. In general, you'll want to employ about as many people as possible.
First ready for the next construction stage. You'll need.
Yes, I'm aware of what I'm doing here. Please stop trying to give me a tutorial game. Next, we're going to actually need to supply people with water. So we're going to have to build a desalination plant. Now, this requires a building site. There are 2 kinds of building sites in Anno 2205. There are coastal building sites, which we can see highlighted here, and mountain building sites, which I can't highlight yet because I don't actually have a building I can put in them.
For specific commodities.
Low on water, yes we are. So, in order to build a building, you just kind of have to place it on the fixed point. I can't put a desalination plant anywhere along this coastline except on these specific locations. This also requires a road connection. That's what that little red arrow
You need
means.
this desalination plant. These days, it's the only way to come by drinkable water.
Yep. There's no drinkable water. And hey, we're corporation level 2, which as I talked about before, improves our credit limit.
Has risen.
Good. And this is important for our people, because our people actually require things. They require organic food, water, and information. Now, in previous Anno games, you get to set a tax limit on how much, how much you tax the people and how happy they'd be. In Anno 2205, you don't control the tax rate anymore. However, each residence holds more people depending on the satisfaction level. So, if we, say, run out of water...
What did the results say?
I'll have to wait for a moment here. How much water do we have in reserve? We have 2, so... In about a minute, we'll run out of water.
Expect the management to show up.
We'll wait. Similarly, we could also run out of everything. If we run out of everything here and literally no needs are fulfilled, then the residence will hold 0 people. That's obviously not a good thing. 1 water in storage. Wait for it. Wait for it. Come on. The game can be a bit slow at times.
Didn't expect the management to show up. Please, come in.
Anyway, so if I were to somehow provide information, we'd actually end up having 5 people here as well. Come on, have we had 0 yet? Christ. I'm trying to do a tutorial video here, but not cooperative. Not cooperative at all. Other things we will need at some point. Well, I need more people for that, and for that I need to make a point. So we're going to continue building more houses. As a general rule, it's pretty hard to go wrong with building more houses. More houses are pretty much universally a good thing. At least tier 1 houses, as they have very little requirement for anything. Like, as we've seen, the number of these smaller houses that I can build with such few production facilities and still maintain a positive balance, since the desalination plant provides 5 water, although we do need a second organic farm. So for this many houses, 2 rice farms and a desalination plant. That's hardly anything. There we go.
I guess, Nothing fancy.
Finally, our water supply ran out, which is ideal. So now you'll notice that these buildings only house 2 out of 5 people.
Attention. Under provision of specific consumer goods detected.
So as a result, once I return the water supply,
Me? Oh, yeah, I'm fine.
they're suddenly going to be
Pretty
going
good
up
place
to
to be.
4 out of 5. The number will change slowly here. It's that just shows its capacity, and it'll slowly increase to that. And finally, we will need to drop down an infodrome.
A broad range of information services.
The
This
final
will enable your employees to
requirement
develop
they
their
need.
interests.
They are
as
now
well as their
fully
skills.
satisfied. Fully satisfied means that all of their demands are met and means that this person can actually achieve the next rank. As I talked about before,
Sorry, you must be accustomed to more comfort.
Remarkable progress. You've
So we now
assembled
have an
construction
operator.
crews. The program demands you connect your city with the
okay. Thank you. I don't care about the game. I'm trying to do a tutorial here. Since we now have operators, they now have 2 tiers of needs. Tier 1, which we've already seen, and they now have access to Tier 2 needs. Vitamin drinks, rejuvenators, neuroimplants, and security. Likewise, there are Tier 3 and Tier 4 needs. They are, however, not yet reached.
Is there something the matter at work?
So, workers, operators, executives, and investors. All 4 tiers.
Yeah,
Each one becoming
there
increasingly
something you want?
complicated to supply for because they will need 3 goods and a structure each.
Ah.
Except for the first
I
one,
knew
requiring
there was
2
something
goods and a
going
structure,
on here.
thankfully.
Nick Papadakis, Papadakis Enterprises. You want a good deal?
Look, Nick, fuck off. I'm trying to do a tutorial.
Here.
This game loves to just talk
I'm
to you.
sorry. I'm just a little nervous.
This game, it loves to talk over me, even. So, where were we? Right. So, this is important to note because, in addition to this operator's residence, even without any additional resources, it's still getting only the same resources as one of these, now holds 10 people. 10 people. Inhabitants 10, workforce provided 7, and revenue generated
Sometimes I feel
19.
like there's-
Shut up. Now, revenue generated 14. Revenue generated 19. As you can see, it's not exactly the greatest. But,
It's a good day.
space-wise,
All the more
workers
so
aren't
now
particularly
you've dropped
efficient,
it.
but per person, they generate more revenue than hire does. So it's a trade-off between space. If you have a lot of space, you can just make a gigantic, say, worker metropolis, which will generate you a pile of cash. So per person, or, well, not necessarily, per person, workers will generate more money, but as you move up the food chain, let's say, the corporate food chain, you get higher population density, which can also be pretty advantageous. So, keep that in mind, especially when we're talking about balance of
We'll be the
demand of
company-
resources to the, well, you know, space that you have available, really. Because let's face it, you know what? I can build 1 billion houses on this goddamned island, but I am going to run out of space. Like it or not. Now, in addition to this, where is old Nicky here? There they are. I can very conveniently buy construction resources from him. So that's what I'm going to do to greatly increase the size of the city. And I recommend you do this. Because your first job, regardless of whatever the tutorial lady says, is you need to establish your base. Not necessarily a base in a military sense, but more as a financial and economic sense. You need to have a tax base with
Welcome
which
to
you can
Nick's
do
No
to
One
complete the
Beats Nick.
objectives. So, I'm going to pretty much ignore that for a little while. There is also residential complexes, which I don't really have the ability to build yet, but we will get to at some point. These are just basically 4 houses combined into one. This is actually kind of useful because this means that you can have 2 of these. Can I buy constructor bots from you, Nick?
Hey,
Yeah,
no one
cool.
beats Nick's deals.
So I can show you the uses of residential complexes. Although they tend to require more advanced materials to level up and expand,
Seems like work is follow.
what I can do is I can place 2 of them like this, which means I can effectively have double of them. And now, I can have the equivalent of 4 houses without a road in between. This makes them even more space efficient.
Congratulations on your first taste of
Now,
success.
as we talked about this before with the workers, and this has 20 inhabitants total. This one has 5, so they are effectively per square used the same, but they have the advantage of not having to need as many roads. This can allow for denser population centers. So as you can see, I can no longer lay out, houses the way I did before. Doesn't work out so well. Now,
Welcome
Nikki,
to Nick's house.
I need all your resources here. So we want to try and create as much of a tax base as possible. I wouldn't necessarily recommend going to these right away, but unfortunately in a city you build will pretty much be nigh impossible to, shall we say, remodel into these, because it will involve demolishing pretty much the whole thing. There. Now, all of these have little symbols over them. This tells me that the access to infodromes is insufficient. Eventually, as we get closer here, you'll notice that the access to infodromes becomes sufficient. Infodromes have effectively a supply, and this supply just emanates outwards, and the closest buildings get highest priority. So,
You? Here? I'm sorry.
okay, we have a water problem, but we'll get to that. This person actually has full access to information. And as we move up and along here, information access becomes sufficient. But then we get to here, and the information access is no longer sufficient.
Unfulfilled demand for
There are a
specific
few ways to
commodities.
handle this. One, I could place another infodrome here, which would just expand the information supply along these roads. It still probably wouldn't reach the other end. On the other hand, I could put an infodrome here, which will improve the access to information supply along here. And now we actually only have a middle column where the information supply is insufficient, because the supply range from either infodrome and their supply get used up. According to this, I still have a major deficit, unfortunately, of information supply. And that is true. We also have a major deficit of energy supply. So we're going to need to construct a wind turbine. Actually, that's not our only option. Okay, correction, it is our only option so far.
Warning. Energy
Good.
demand too high.
There.
Countermeasures recommended.
I've just performed our countermeasures. Now,
Consumer
wind turbines
indices
are
show
a
unfulfilled
bit of a
demand For
nuisance.
specific commodities.
They have what I guess you could say is an efficiency radius. They cannot overlap with any other wind turbine. Well, they can, but as you'll notice, the efficiency drops. Placing 2 wind turbines together like this basically gives them each an efficiency of 58%, which is less than ideal. So you get a lot less bang for your buck. You generally don't want it to go any lower than like 99%. It's okay to have just a little overlap, but, do your best to try and spread them out if you can. And by doing this, you get a lot more energy and a lot less problems. So we do need to increase the information supply still. And I haven't actually created a proper supply for building supplies. You will obviously need quite a lot more than just a single sunflower factory and single biopolymer factory. You will need to expand industry just as well as you need to expand a city. I would recommend 3 or 4, personally. Sunflower and biopolymers. And there we are. Oh hey, mountain building sites are also now available. Good for us. So as I talked about before, there are 2 kinds of building sites in Anno. One of which is called a mountain building site, which I can now access. And I'm going to place down a feldspar quarry and a cobalt mine. Now, unlike in, say, SimCity, I don't have to worry about putting industry right next to residential. As it turns out, nobody gives a flying fuck. Live next to a giant mine? Don't care. There. And there we go. Alright. So, that gives us a nice little supply of cobalt and a supply of negative electricity. Always good. So I'll place down yet another windmill. You'll find that you'll have to almost design your cities around the idea of having wind turbines. Now, this will allow me to create a robot assembly hall. Here we have our first, I suppose, supply chain. Proper supply chain. Up until now we've been dealing with tier 1 stuff that does pretty much nothing. We're going to actually need more water. And anytime you can just sort of see what you are necessary of. I'm actually going to need more than just that. Wow. I need a lot of water. So, each of these water mills provides only 5. I call them water mills. Desalination plants provides only 5 water. And this is on a permanent basis, I should say. All values in this game are expressed per minute. That's how much money I'm earning per minute. That's how much the resources change per minute. And now we have a sufficient water supply. Nowhere near sufficient food supply, however. So, as I said, industry will have to expand to meet demand. So we'll do that. Alright, unfortunately I have no logistics resources for this. As I talked about before, logistics, similar to infodromes, is a supply radius. So, nothing out here is getting picked up. There we go. Put one of those down. We still have a huge power shortage, but at least logistics are now sufficient. Because each of these were starting to cost us a lot of logistics, especially with these mines here. All sorts of things will need to expand to meet demand. Shh, I know that's there. I'm trying to leave that for later. Now we have sufficient electricity, we have sufficient food, we have sufficient water, and I think we have sufficient infodrome. Excellent! Now, these factories, as I talked about before, are still 1-to-1 ratio with the mines, thankfully. So 1 cobalt mine and 1 feldspar quarry is enough to supply 1 robot assembly hall. A single robot assembly hall.
Good.
It's not bad.
You've gathered the components needed for the elevator.
Yes, thank you. And we now have the ability to build the Constructobots that I've been buying from Nick up until now to build these things. In addition, as you can see, they even cost Constructobots to upgrade, whereas these are only biopolymers. These require less advanced resources to upgrade, but I have to upgrade 4 of these to match one of those, so that would be the equivalent of 8 biopolymers. This requires only 4 biopolymers and 2 Constructobots. So ultimately I save on biopolymers, but at the cost of needing Constructobots to upgrade. As I said, for space efficiency, I would still recommend trying to build the complexes, that's what they're called, versus regular residences, when you can. They're good down the line, and for future-proofing and planning, it's generally advisable. However, it does mean that your upgrade costs will be more expensive. Also, throughout islands, you'll actually find these. We're going to talk about these. Quick to collect. Just little resource boxes. Generally, I find resource boxes contain other things, that's why I wanted to wait. But, for the time being... So our current objective is to attract a population of 1,000 operators. Now, it expects me to have to produce more advanced stuff along the way here, such as vitamin drinks and rejuvenators, but that is not actually going to be required. Instead, I'm going to do something crazy. Because of the fact that I've built up such a tax base for myself, I can work with it. I don't need to go to the more advanced supply levels yet. Alright. I'm just going to back down to tier 1. I'm going to ensure that we have a sufficient supply of food for what I'm about to do. Unfortunately, this means that we both have no electricity or logistic supply, as always. You will have to constantly expand your infrastructure with your ambitions. Not exactly the greatest place to put that, but hey. Alright, we still have absolutely no logistics supply because each one of these is requiring 13 logistics maintenance. But if I drop one of these down, hey, suddenly only 1 logistics maintenance. Ain't it great? In addition, I'm going to need a hell of a lot of extra water. There we go. Alright, so everything's prepared. En masse, I can now upgrade. Well, that's not true. I'm going to need a lot more biopolymers.
You came to the right place. Always a pleasure, my friend.
And I think I will. 4. There we go. That's not at all where that's supposed to have gone. Luckily, I can hit M, click, and move. And done. Although I still have a little bit of a power shortage and logistical shortage. We're working on it. Alright. Put that one here. And then find more land that I can actually put down wind turbines on. That's the tricky part of this game. It's finding enough room for your wind turbines. So you're asking what this is. This is a bridge.
This spot here is perfectly suited to support a bridge to the other side. Building one here will give you access to new construction ground.
Hey, you know what? Do my job for me, Sam. You're great at it. Thanks. So that's basically everything she said. Unfortunately, it requires tier 3 building materials, so we'll actually have to get, we'll have to fully supply an operator and upgrade it to executive before we can do that. And that requires newer implants, which you'll notice we can't actually build here. We'll talk about that, because we're going to have to go to the Arctic for that. I haven't brought the screen up yet, but there is a world screen. There are other sectors in the temperate region. There are also sectors up here in the Arctic, and over here on the moon. There's also the space station here. But, as I said, we'll get to that in due time. For now, I've given you a bit of a quick start guide. And,
Sorry,
hey.
Must be, accustomed to...
I can just hit buttons. If you just shift click,
expanded.
unfortunately I've run out of biopolymer. If you click
Been a while
and
since
then
I've such an
shift
important
click
guest.
here,
What
as it
can I
says
do
down
for
at the
you?
bottom, as many employees as possible. This will generally be related to your number of employees versus operators, or
Hey,
old
come
tier versus
no
new
one
tier.
beats Nick's the...
Because you can, no matter what, you must maintain 20% of your base as workers. You can never have a higher ratio than that.
Got any work to do?
Same
Consumer
with
indices
operators.
show unfulfilled
20%
demand
of your
for
company must
specific
also be
commodities.
operators, which leaves, you know, and again, same with, actually no, same is not true with executive. 40% must be executives, minimum, and then 20% can be investors, at most. You can never have more than 20% investors, and I guess never more than 60% executives, theoretically. And never more than 80%
Been a
operators.
while since I've...
That would be the theoretical maximums. So anyway, as I said, I can just hit this button. Shoot it.
Construction options expanded.
And suddenly, the number of people I have is climbing quickly. I need 1,000 operators. Now, the game has suggested that I will need to expand and produce vitamin drinks, though I'm quickly proving that's nowhere near the case or necessity. You
Your
can earn a
technicians
heck of a
are
lot of
ready.
money doing this.
Start the elevator construction once all other requirements are met. My associate, John Rafferty, is already heading here.
Alright. That's all we needed to see. Boom. Although the game told me I would need to produce vitamin drinks, as you can see by establishing a large base, you can earn a lot of money, and you can get yourself into an excellent position of financial stability. Although the game may progress you at a certain rate, or feel like it is trying to progress you at a certain rate, I always recommend holding back and expanding your population. Only once you start feeling that the advantages of getting the next tier are good for you, should you bother with it. I'm going to give you an example of this. The moon. The moon is the late game stuff. There's a lot of late game stuff. And why would you want to go to the moon, you ask? Well, one, it's super expensive, so that's a reason not to go to the moon. But it does give you something. It gives you a supply of extremely cheap to produce energy. Now, I say cheap, but the reality is the moon is very unprofitable for a long time. You need to have actually a significant population base and a significant industry to back it up before it becomes profitable. The only thing you're really going to get out of the moon for a while is energy. You're only going to get fusion energy and transfer that back home to Earth. And to do that is going to be at least 50,000 credits. So, ask yourself this. If I go to my windmills right now, you know, let's say I have, well, actually I can probably count the number of windmills I have here. Alright, I probably have, let's say 11 or 12 of these. That means I'm spending about 660 credits on electrical generation. Now, if there's 50,000 credit, if 50,000 credits is the base price to go to the moon, but would allow me to demolish all my windmills, that's a lot of windmills. So I always recommend expanding your population base. It's never a bad thing to do. Like, I could sit here all day and just upgrade these workers into operators and further expand my population base, giving me even more money. Hell, I could just fill this entire area. And there we go. I have a pile of extra food still. I have a lot of extra water still. Unfortunately, I'm not able to supply vitamin drinks or rejuvenators yet, but hey, it's something, yeah? Now, if you're really strapped for space, you can use tidal power stations. These generate 300 electricity, but have the unfortunate need of one of these zones, a coastal zone. So that means they take up the same spot that could otherwise be used to generate water, or, say, algae, which allows you to create rejuvenators, or the like. These zones are limited, so you kind of have to think about how you're going to use them. That's always a bit of wisdom there. So, you know, consider that as well. These generate a lot of power, but also require, you know, a coastal building site. Now, I would say we have a pretty good population base to work with now. And we continue to get even more. We have 2,500 people. We have over twice the operators that we require.
Construction of new building types.
And we're pretty much capping out, actually, on the number of operators we can have here.
Always a pleasure, my friend.
Quick.
What can I say? It's just amazing.
Now we'll see that we actually have an error. Missing building of this type 1. Alright, click this. You actually notice very little resources got spent. We have now hit our cap.
Following me home now, but I don't mind.
Missing buildings of this type 1. That means I actually need to have more worker residences before I can have more operator residences.
Go home. The usual.
You can see that will, as I said before, you can have a maximum of 80% of your population be operators. 20% of your population must reserve to be workers at all times. Similarly, when promoting to executives, 20% of your population must be operators. And when promoting to investors, 40% must be executives. So the optimum ratio, again, is 20, 20, 40, 20. Keep that in mind. Anyway, so this is the maximum number of operators I can have. Getting us pretty decent number. And I think we're in much better shape to actually begin spaceport construction. It would have been a little while ago.
Miss Bowman assigned me to ensure the transport safety. Approaching your sector, over. Code Red. We're under attack. Code Red. Damn it. The cargo. Protect the ship.
People of Earth, this is the manifesto of the Moon's independence.
They attacked
I'm going to skip this, because that's story related.
Alright, no time to study.
Now, this goes on to the combat that I talked about before. We have to go out here, and a new zone has appeared. Military happens in military zones.
Bunch of rats laying hand on our ships. Give them hell.
So, in order to engage in military, rather than in previous Anno games where it was on the same map that you built your cities, you have to travel to a different map. Unfortunately, this will incur some loading times. And we'll just simply head there.
There. That's where the bleeding cow.
Alright, let's go.
Affirmative.
So, this is your battle fleet. How do you get more ships in this battle fleet of yours? Well, you actually have to upgrade your corporate level. This is another reason why I suggested getting more people. By having more people, I have a higher corporate level and actually have more ships to use on this mission.
Taking care of the damages.
Now, there are throughout these regions quest givers.
That's why I want you to go in and put an end to it.
And before we begin, we're going to go around and pick up these quests. Quests are simply given by people around the map.
All talks have failed.
Alright. So, we have 4 missions in this area. The primary one, destroy Orbiter Watch's ships surrounding the container ship. Find lost containers on land. This is basically just a scavenger hunt you can take time to do. There's one of them. And there are 3 of them scattered across the map to find. They're generally, as far as I can tell, close to the coastline, so you generally don't have to look too far inland. But you don't have to be close to them or anything, you just have to find their location. You have to deliver a missile barrage to Nick Branch's office. Alright. And in theory. Cool. Alright. Now, there are a wide variety of enemy types we'll run into. The first one is mines, and very conveniently those tend to hurt the enemy boats as well. There are also enemy ships and enemy structures of varying varieties. There's the hedgehog, and you'll notice there's different classes. The hunter,
I see.
You also have your own classes of boats. The Titan, which is a battleship. The Flare, which... well, actually, there's two of these. These are an artillery class of ship. The Turtle here, which is a defensive class of ship, which fires torpedoes. And the Spark... Yeah, the Spark's a bit of a weird one. It actually fires a round that will bounce between multiple targets. Like I said, the Flare is long-range artillery, so actually kind of useful to take out buildings.
Ready defense system.
As you can see, it can just barely outrange towers, but more importantly, it does a boatload of damage to them compared to everything else. It would have taken the Titan, like, several salvos to take that down. Now, across the map, there are also little boxes you can collect containing rare resources. Cool, so we're going to deliver this missile barrage here to Nick's branch office. I'll explain the missile barrage in a moment, among other things. Although we drifted a little too closely into range. So, we'll deliver one missile barrage that I picked up, just to get the mission completed.
You, my friend, are no one to mess with.
So that means I lost the missile barrage here. There are 3 kinds of special powers you can use in a zone that you pick up from these little boxes you'll find around here. I just picked up an EM Pulse and a support fleet.
Battle stations.
Okay, this is not good.
Air system
That around.
online.
So, there's the EM Pulse, which disables ships in an area. And also does some damage. There's also the support fleet. By the way, you have a limited cast range away from your command ship. So, throw this down. And this causes a couple of submarines to surface and start engaging your enemies where they stand.
Target acquired.
Now, it's best to note that there's also the missile barrage, which does not disable ships, but does a lot of damage. In addition, you will find these things called fuel, which I'm currently full on, so I can't pick up any more, but allow you to use repair drones, kinetic shields, and wave mines. Pop.
Enemy detected.
Which can be very useful for breaking up larger groups of enemy vessels. To get you a bit of a more favorable engagement, the kinetic shield will protect your ships.
To shields.
And now my ships are invincible for the fight. It's basically short immunity from damage. Now, in the first mission, you will have John Rafferty's ship, which will sit around and repair your ships for you. In the main and the rest of the missions, you will not have this luxury, so you will have to engage in using a repair drone power. So it's good to try and keep your ships alive. If you lose your ships, they're lost for the remainder of the mission, but you will get them back for future missions. Now that I've explained all the powers except for Rocket Barrage, but I really don't think I need to explain the Rocket Barrage power too much. You click on it, and similar to the EM Pulse, it just does a lot of damage and doesn't disable anything. I actually kind of wanted to use the EM Pulse on something that would actually survive the engagement, but oh well. I didn't realize it did that much damage. And occasionally, you can just sometimes pick up more powers. This is a bit of a trickier fight, so we'll bring in a little reinforcements. Be careful, because the EM Pulse, as well as Rocket Barrage to demonstrate with. EM Pulses and Rocket Barrage, if you like.
My equipment and your
I have won the mission, thank you.
Sweeping in and saving the day.
You'll also get military levels, which allow you to improve your ships. This is based on combat experience, which you get for completing secondary missions as well as the primary mission. I'm going to return to the mission, just so I can demonstrate the Rocket Barrage. And a casual warning.
Nuclear missile. Fire.
You can hurt your own ships. So, you know, don't fire the artillery a little too close. Don't fire the artillery too close. At any time now, we can leave the mission. And we'll go on to the final part of this tutorial.
A bunch of ships on the bottom of the sea.
I'm glad you came back unharmed. This attack gave everyone at the Union headquarters shock.
Alright.
The program has to go on.
So as we were talking about before, we now have these new rare resources that appear on the orbital screen. Iridium and graphene. Iridium is universal and will be used in all sectors. Graphene, however, is unique to the temperate sector. There is also petrochemicals, unique to the Arctic sector. And magnetite, I think it's pronounced as. which is unique to Lunar Sector. And now we get to go into modules. Back in the old Anno games, you used to place down a farm and then place on little modules to farms that allow you to customize the shape of the building a little bit.
Attention.
I'm way too old for adventures like...
Okay. Alright, where were we? So, interestingly enough, now I can place down, say, a extra rice field here. This will improve production. Significantly, I might add. It will also, well, in this case, productivity 180%, maintenance cost plus 90%, making it more efficient. But as you'll notice, it costs graphene, which you can only really get from combat zones. So it's best noted that you'll have to go into the combat zones to get these rare resources, which will allow you to get these modules to make your buildings more efficient. Now, these are especially good on buildings like the desalinization plant, where I can, say, place 2 extra filters down. This just tripled its production rate. It now produces 15 water. It produces 15 water compared to the old 5. Unfortunately, you can only have a limited number of modules of that type. I can have 4 of these kinds of modules on a rice farm, but only 2 here. They're also on fixed positions. In addition, there are also drone hives, accumulator units, and storage depots. There are also some others that you'll find here. Finance calculators, and drone hives here. Finance calculator being unique to energy devices. Now, I could say place down drone hives here, but I'm not going to. And this is a particularly useful thing here. Say I'm having a power crisis, or I really just hate building wind turbines. I can place down these on a building. I don't have enough iridium, unfortunately, to place any more. But this building, which required a lot of energy because of all the extra stuff I put on it, now requires a heck of a lot less energy. Energy maintenance 10, module effects plus 60%. This is as a result of plus 100% from the increased number of filter units. I put on 2 filter units for plus 100%.
I can't do my job like this.
And minus percentages from my accumulator units. Done. And so it only requires 16 energy. So this, now that we've improved this one desalinization plant, it now produces 3 times as much water for an extra 6 energy and twice as many workers. So modules greatly increase the efficiency of your plants. You can put them on pretty much anything. I can triple the output here and here. Now, as I said, a lot of things have limited number of modules you can put. In fact, all of them do. Anywhere between 2, I think, is the lowest, and 6 being the highest I've seen. Now, unfortunately, all these production increases do increase the cost of electricity and workforce. So you will need people, and you will need energy, which is where the old Tidal plant comes in. Ain't it a glorious thing?
Warning. Energy demand can no longer be met.
And now we have extra energy. Excellent. Simple as that. And that's the basis of how this game works. Now, unfortunately,
Not
to get to
bad
Tier
here.
3,
For the
we'll
most
have to
part.
travel to new areas, such as the Arctic. And this is where we're going to end our tutorial. To go to the Arctic... Oops. I apparently need some graphene to do it. Hey there. Take that back. Watch out.
Cable firmly attached. Elevator car ready for departure.
Congratulations.
So, whoops. Now we have access to the
In
Arctic,
the Arctic
sector.
all your actions will fall under
This
the
you will given
supervision
one of
of
3
the Arctic
choices.
custodians. Let's have a look at their
Now,
territory.
the important thing for the Arctic sector, and why the Arctic sector is so important, is
On the
it's where you
whole,
get Nero
it's a decent
implants.
workplace.
You'll notice that we actually can't produce Nero implants here. You have to produce those in the Arctic, and then actually ship them through a global trade network down to here. Now, I've also, believe, do I have the ability to? Yes, I do. I have the ability to set up a trade route with the world market. Up at the top there, we can see the varied prices for things. Now, I'm currently not producing vitamin drinks. But let's say I want to supply my people with them. I'm going to buy vitamin drinks. So I selected my good, vitamin drinks, I will now select the source sector, the world market, and I will import them to here. Currently, I only have access to small transfer cars. This means that I can only do 20 with a single route, and I only have one route available to me, so
Goods have been launched.
I'm going to start
We'll keep you
importing
posted on their ETA.
my importing 20 vitamin drinks for my people. This will actually meet some of my demand and will quickly increase the number of operators I have. Ain't that something? Now I can also sell goods to the world market, hopefully at a profit. Unfortunately, it is best to note that elevator cars have an upkeep to them, 280. Or no, sorry, 200.
Construction options.
So if I'm going to sell
expanded.
something to the world market, unfortunately, I have to actually make more than 200 from the sale of those goods to even cover the cost of the elevator car, let alone anything else. So a lot of goods can be, unfortunately, unprofitable, and some of them can only be profitable to those who have larger elevator cars. For example, the medium elevator car can carry 150 of a good and only costs 1,000, meaning it carries 5, 6, 7.5 times as much for only 5 times the upkeep cost. So the larger cars are more efficient. And I think the large one, shit, how much does that carry? I know it has an upkeep of 3,000 and carries 500? Yeah, I think 500. Yeah, 500 for 3,000. So that's highly much more efficient than the small cars are. So we have to keep that in mind. Now, the prices are locked despite the changes on the market. We can see that vitamin drinks are actually plummeting in price. Unfortunately, vitamin drinks are at the lowest possible price, I believe, so that works out favorably for us. A good import. But every 2 hours of playtime, the route will need to be refreshed, and the prices will then change. You'll either get a chance to cancel. I can cancel any time, but the prices will be updated at that point. So if you have a particularly profitable route now, it might be less useful or profitable in 2 hours, depending on the whims of the market. Now, unfortunately, there is no multiplayer or online play, and this is more or less the extent in which of online features go. Alright, that about covers it. As you'll expand beyond this quick start tutorial guide, you'll come to the new Arctic sector, which has its own set of mechanics. The lunar sector has its own set of mechanics as well. Each one is unique and hard to necessarily make an easy tutorial for, but I think I've done my best to cover the basics of this game. Thank you everybody for watching. This has been your lovely host, Kelvin, signing off.